Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
Shapoorji Pallonji is an 153-year young, not old, engineering conglomerate. Has a dream to engineer a better planet. We have a dream for Africa to engineer a super Africa. At Shapoorji, our dream for Africa was born a good 13 years ago. At Shapoorji, we believe that Africa and India were born of the same seed. We believe that we have a lot in common and that we can develop these two continents to the mutual benefit of each other. Today, I can proudly say that we are in over 20 different countries in Africa. Our objective at Shapoorji is to enjoy customer trust and to deliver iconic projects on time. We are and have been an international organization for 48 years. In order to focus our vision on certain areas, we would like to have a strategic growth in Africa in the following areas: solar and storage, large-scale convention centers, mass housing, large marine projects, large infrastructure and connectivity projects, large oil and gas projects. At Shapoorji, we endeavor to touch the lives of people in a beneficial manner in whichsoever country or geography that we put our foot into. We would like to come to Africa to enrich the social culture, the social fabric of the entire continent. We would like to come to Africa to enrich ourselves with the culture of the various different African countries. We plan at Shapoorji, we envision at Shapoorji, our focus at Shapoorji is to be in Africa for another 100 years. We would love to make investments in Africa and see Africa grow and grow together with Africa.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
Shapoorji Pallonji is an 153-year young, not old, engineering and construction conglomerate. We have a dream to engineer a better planet. We have a dream for Africa to engineer a super Africa. At Shapoorji, our dream for Africa was born a good 13 years ago. At Shapoorji, we believe that Africa and India were born of the same seed. We believe that we have a lot in common and that we can develop these two continents to the mutual benefit of each other. Today, I can proudly say that we are in over 20 different countries in Africa. Our objective at Shapoorji is to enjoy customer trust and to deliver iconic projects on time. We are and have been an international organization for 48 years. In order to focus our vision on certain areas, we would like to have a strategic growth in Africa in the following areas: solar and storage, large-scale convention centers, mass housing, large marine projects, large infrastructure and connectivity projects, large oil and gas projects. At Shapoorji, we endeavor to touch the lives of people in a beneficial manner in whichsoever country or geography that we put our foot into. We would like to come to Africa to enrich the social culture, the social fabric of the entire continent. We would like to come to Africa to enrich ourselves with the culture of the various different African countries. We plan at Shapoorji, we envision at Shapoorji, our focus at Shapoorji is to be in Africa for another 100 years. We would love to make investments in Africa and see Africa grow and grow together with Africa.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Today is about delivering excellence across business sectors.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Parag from Afcon.
Hello, Parag. Thanks for joining.
Good morning. This is Solomon Quainer. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Solomon Quainer. How are you?
Okay.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Mr. Admasu Tadese, good morning.
Hello, greetings to you and everyone else.
Same. How are you? I hope everybody is keeping well.
Good afternoon. This is Sahil Patel from Ashoka BuildCon.
Good afternoon, Sahil.
Good afternoon. This is Melanie from Exim Bank.
Yeah, Miss Lawrence, good afternoon. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon. This is Saravana Kumar joining from Kenya.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Saravana Kumar.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. George is here.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good morning, Dr. George Onker. Thanks for joining us.
How are you, Hasha?
Ms. Bangari, good
Yeah.
afternoon, it's Kavita from CII.
Yeah, Kavita, can we start? Have the guest of honors joined?
Not yet, actually, I just spoke to Minister Rickenberg. He's joining in 5 minutes.
Okay, so should we start at 4 because all the panelists have already joined?
Okay, maybe we can start with the video message of the Mauritian minister while Minister Rickenberg joins in. That will save us some time.
Sure, Kavita. Or would you like us to wait for maybe a few minutes before we start?
He said he's joining in 5 minutes. So either we could wait or we could start with video recording.
Yeah, anyways, because anyways, we'll take a few minutes to set the background. So I think if everybody agrees, I would prefer to start now, please. Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harsha Bangari, Deputy Managing Director, India Exim Bank, and I'll be your moderator for this session. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the first plenary session of the 16th CII Exim Bank India Africa Conclave on Project Partnership. It is indeed an honor for us to have each one of you with us, and we thank you for graciously accepting our invitation for the panel discussion and agreeing to share your valuable perspectives on designing innovative financing solutions for doing business in Africa. We look forward to hearing your perspectives, and I am more than confident that your insights would encourage more Indian companies to explore opportunities for increased engagement with partners in the African region. Before I set the background for our guests of honor and distinguished panelists, may I request everyone to please stay on mute if not speaking. I encourage the audience to post questions through the chat box, and would also like to mention that there is interpretation facility from English to French and vice versa, and you may like to select accordingly by using the desired channel. In terms of introducing the session, of course, we are now talking in the background of COVID-19, so it always sort of takes a center stage. COVID-19 pandemic arrived at a time when growth prospects for many African countries were promising. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a massive impact on Africa, particularly resulting in weakening of the region's macroeconomic fundamentals. Fiscal deficits in the region are estimated to have doubled in 2020. The debt levels in the region have also risen, with debt to GDP rising from 60% pre-pandemic days to around 70 to 75% of the total outstanding debt of over $700 billion. Given that there is a limited fiscal space, the post-pandemic growth will, to a large extent, will depend on increased private sector engagements. This pandemic has hastened the need to reevaluate the existing structures and realigning resources for the same. As Africa is rebuilding from the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the region, ensuring the flow of finance is critical to continue to be on the sustainable growth path. However, given the elevated financing needs, the traditional financing mechanism alone may not be sufficient to meet the huge financing needs. Innovative financing can play a critical role to bridge the gaps, particularly in terms of infrastructure financing and promoting access to trade finance, which at the same time would also support Africa in meeting its UN SDG targets. New sources of private capital could be used to fill the financing gap, but will require innovative and scalable approaches. Financial tools and approaches such as guarantee bonds, green bonds, and infrastructure bonds, and advanced purchase agreements can be used to encourage participation from untapped private resources. Here again, the role of ECAs and development financial institutions cannot be underscored. And this, of course, helps in facilitating the development of critical industries through the provision of affordable credit, thus enabling exporters to enter new and relatively risky markets. India Exim Bank, in alignment with Government of India's objectives, has been a partner institution to promote economic development in Africa through various programs, including Government of India supported lines of credit and BCNEIA programs. India Exim Bank, along with like-minded institutions like Africa Development Bank, has also joined hands with to promote the Kukuza Project Development Company, which aims to conceive and identify bankable projects under the PPP model. Here we may also note that India's trade balance with Africa is in Africa's favor and is mainly driven by India's trade deficit in crude petroleum. In view of this, to mitigate payment risks when countries are facing such challenges, including foreign exchange crisis, alternative trade arrangements like financing in the form of local currency funding, counter trade measures, and barter trade may also be explored, which could serve as effective alternate payment mechanisms for recovery of dues or securing future payments. Some of the questions which become relevant for doing business in Africa and cater to the financing needs merit attention are: is there a scope for venture capital or private equity participation for project investments in Africa? And how conducive is the environment for public-private partnerships and participations of global institutional investment funds? Again, what is the potential for development of capital markets in the region, as well as the use of green financing and climate change mitigation financing options? So with this background, I would like to invite our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Neil Rickenberg, Minister of Finance, Kingdom of Eswatini, to address us and give his perspectives on the topic of the session. Sir,
Ma'am, I don't think he's joined yet.
sure.
I think we can move on
While
to-
we wait for His Excellency Rickenberg, may I request our next guest of honor, His Excellency Dr. Ranganathan Padhyaychi, Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, Republic of Mauritius, who could not join us in person on account of some exigencies, and his address will be recorded message. Thank you.
His Excellency, Mr. Neil Rickenberg, Minister of Finance, Kingdom of Eswatini. His Excellency, Mr. Lassane Kabore, Minister of Economy, Finance and Development, Burkina Faso. Dr. Shrika Reddy, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Mr. Noel Tata, Chairman of CII Africa Committee. Distinguished panel members, members of the Confederation of the Indian Industry, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. At the very outset, I would like to thank the Confederation of Indian Industries for inviting me to address the CII Exim Bank Virtual Conclave on India-Africa Partnership. This event is now at its 16th edition. It demonstrates the lasting relevance and success in connecting governments, businesses, investment, and the people of Africa and India. Let me commend this initiative of the CII in organizing this conclave, which is instrumental in further strengthening the unique relationship which India and Africa have built. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted lives and livelihoods of millions of citizens in Africa and India. More than ever, we need to capitalize on our special ties to support each other and accelerate the development agenda, African countries and India. Today, companies and businesses are looking towards Africa to invest. Africa is fast becoming a seedbed of innovation with fast-growing businesses and an increasing pool of talents. One of the sectors in which Africa has a huge potential is pharmaceutical and vaccine production, particularly in the COVID-19 context. And Mauritius, with a conducive environment for doing business, is ideally positioned to be an outsourcing location for the production of Indian pharmaceutical products and vaccines. Furthermore, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation and Partnership Agreement between India and Mauritius offer significant opportunities for scaled production and preferential access to a market of more than 2.5 billion inhabitants. To attract companies worldwide engaged in the manufacture of medical drugs and COVID-19 vaccines, Mauritius is providing numerous incentives, including the provision of a seed capital of up to 50 million USD for the production of vaccines. Ladies and gentlemen, India is now Africa's third largest trading partner, accounting for 6.4% of African total trade. India is also the fifth largest investor in the African continent, with investments of 54 billion USD in the last few years, in particular in oil and gas, mining, banking, and textiles, with ONGC Videsh, Gujarat State Petroleum Corporation, and All India Limited already in Africa. More and more investments are coming in the telecommunication business as well, with Bharti Airtel, already one of the biggest telecoms operator in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, clearly today, there's a shift in global investment towards the continent, which is also seeing the significant participation of Indian enterprises. At the same time, opportunities are opening up in the field of innovative financing, especially in the current global context. I believe there are some main channels of innovative investments on which the continent can leverage. For instance, development finance institutions can play a profound role in catalyzing the shift towards socially responsible investments revolving around the environmental, social, and governance ESG principles. According to McKinsey, these investments are worth than 30 trillion USD, up by 68% since 2014 and tenfold since 2004. As Africa engages in major infrastructural projects to improve the lives of its citizens, ESG investment can be part of the solution. Moreover, green and blue bonds are also alternatives to raise capital that are meant to have positive environmental or climate effects. Mauritius can be a vector for these innovative financing mechanisms. The Bank of Mauritius has recently launched its green and blue bond framework for such financing. Ladies and gentlemen, above markets, investors look for investment protection, a skilled labor force, and a strong legal framework. Mauritius is not only the platform of choice to tap into the opportunities that exist in the African region, but it is also the place to be when you are looking at investing in China, the United States, and Europe. The Mauritian jurisdiction provides the right legal framework based on international best practices, allowing free movement of capital, protecting investors and their investments. This is particularly enhanced by a wide range of bilateral investment and double taxation avoidance treaties with a number of countries, including a network of such bilateral agreements with African economies. Besides the macroeconomic, social, and political stability in Mauritius, our legislations allow for the setting up of trust, foundations, and also caters for captive insurance activities. Ladies and gentlemen, Mauritius is a trusted partner in India's Africa strategy. Mere beno aur banyo, Mauritius aapki manzil hai. Look no further than Mauritius. I would like to end by quoting Mahatma Gandhi, "The future depends on what we do in the present, act today, and we'll all prosper." Dhanyavad.
We thank His Excellency Padyaji for his recorded address. May I now request our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Lassane Kabore, Minister of Economy, Finance and Development, Burkina Faso, to deliver his address, please.
Ma'am, I don't think he's also been able to join. I would request that we move on to the panelists, and I'll notify you once the ministers have joined.
Sure. Thanks, Kavita. So now I would like to invite our esteemed panelists to share their perspectives and views on the subject. We have 5 minutes for each panelist, and then we will open the session for interactions with the audience. And of course, by that time, we hope our 2 guests of honor also to join. May I now invite Mr. Admasu Tadese, Group Managing Director and CEO, TDB. Mr. Tadese is an international banker and business leader with experience at board and executive levels globally and in Africa. Mr. Tadese, as one of the premier financial institutions in Africa, how can your organization drive the deepening of the capital markets in Africa and help mobilize the required resources for investment and growth? Also wanted to understand from you, how can regional development banks scale up infrastructure financing for regional infrastructure projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Deputy MD Bangari. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel together with my colleagues. I see several friends like Solomon also on the call. Very much a good occasion for us to share some views. Of course, India XM and us have worked together for quite some time. I think the question that you posed is a very key question. It's not a new question. It's a question we've all been asking for quite some time. Since the turn of the millennium, the whole question of capital markets has been very much on the radar screens of African policymakers and various stakeholders. And I think maybe at the outset, we should just say that the good news is we have over 20 exchanges today in Africa. And if you go back 2 decades, you could count them just on one hand. So there's been very strong development in terms of, you know, this recognition that capital markets need to be developed. And we've seen the formation and we've seen the slow growth. But of course, the problem remains that they're not deep enough. So there's still quite some ways to go. But of course, institutions like TDB and other premier DFIs in the continent, of course, the African Development Bank being a key one, all of us have a role to play in terms of looking at stimulating these nascent capital markets by, for instance, issuing local currency bonds. That's one way to do it. Supporting our own corporate clients to do the same by also helping them to of course, list. And of course, in the process, even offer additional services like credit enhancing some of those issuances as well. We have issued local currency bonds in several countries here in this part of Africa. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, we're looking at several others. But of course, one has to be frank and admit that the numbers will never really be on the scale that is required in terms of what these countries need. Of course, there's also the issue of nature of currency. A lot of the infrastructure projects that are actually being mounted require hard currency because of the nature of some of the contracts and the equipment that's involved. And in that regard, you also, of course, need hard currency. But there's also opportunities to issue, of course, bonds globally and raise hard currency that way. We've seen African sovereigns doing that, of course, on the back of their own, you know, balance sheets as sovereigns and their ratings. It's not very specific to one project. It's not project bonds as such, but oftentimes the prospectus of these African sovereigns speak to infrastructure programs. So that is already being done. And I think the African sovereigns have had a good run with the development of the launching of sovereign bonds. There's, of course, question marks sometimes around the pricing of those bonds and the sustainability of the debt that comes with it. There's been quite a bit of debate on this. And of course, the question really becomes, you know, will these investment projects pay back, right? So they have to be revenue generating, sustainable, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I thought I should just say that we have tried very hard to issue as much as we can in the local capital markets. And typically TDB would be a AAA rated issuer in our various capital market environments. And even though we're AAA rated, we're quite prepared to pay a premium for the bonds that we issue because it's part and parcel of the ecosystem of those exchanges. So we will be doing more of these as we go along, but I think one has to be frank, as I've said, it's not going to be the panacea. Resource mobilization will have to look at many other sources, and I think you've made reference to quite a few of them in your opening remarks. The African Development Bank, together with us and others, we're working on various new partnerships to try to boost the envelope, also looking at new sources of financing, possibly the SDRs of the IMF, but also, you know, other sources as well, with the interest in Africa peaking again. So yes, there's a lot to be done, and I think in 5 minutes, this is as much as I can say to kickstart the discussions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tadese, and I'm sure we'll come back to you, and I'm sure I'm looking forward to a very active interaction with the audience also. If I'm not wrong, I think His Excellency Rickenberg has already joined.
Yes.
Kavita, if you suggest, we can request him to deliver his address, please.
Yes, please, Ms. Bangari, that is exactly what I was going to also.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Welcome, His Excellency Mr. Neil Rickenberg, Minister of Finance, Kingdom of Eswatini. May I request you, sir, to address us and give your perspectives on the topic, which is the innovative financing solutions for working in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My sincere apologies for being a bit late. For some reason, I was sitting at the test room there and waiting on that front, wondering why things weren't taking off. My apologies to everybody. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning or afternoon to whichever side one is to all of you. It is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to join you today on this very important event, which seeks to create, increase, and sustain an environment conducive for collaborations and partnerships with the Indian government, importers, partnering industries, and the entire civil service for the development of African countries. India's relations with the Kingdom of Eswatini are close, friendly, and cordial. Some of the main exports from India to Eswatini include
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Am I not clear?
No, actually, we lost you for the last maybe 10-15 seconds, Dr. Rickenberg. So if you want, please continue. Now you're very clear.
I'm sorry. I'll move over to data in case it cuts out again. Let me know, please. Both of which have been completed. And there's now a new funding that's also been approved for two projects, which is our Parliament building and the disaster recovery site, which have yet to be implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, the entire world has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has seen many economies being negatively affected, and Eswatini has not been spared. The government of India, again, played an important role in this regard through their support with the donation of COVID-19 vaccines, which will help in saving many lives in the COVID-19 fight, which is far from over. Ladies and gentlemen, as independent nations, India and African countries have come a long way. Our economies continue to grow, and we are seeking to trade more, to invest in each other, and to find greater synergy for our cooperation. Today, India has become one of the largest trade, investment, and development partners of Africa, of which the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has tremendously benefited. The Indian manufacturing industry continues to play a key role in helping Africa's manufacturing industries move up the value chain. The manufacturing industry, pharmaceutical industry, and renewable energy industry are the three vital sectors where Indian investors could make major contributions to Africa's sustained progress. Most African countries need resources for essential development in a timely and predictable manner, and they need to maximize their use of them. The current global economic crisis has increased the challenges of providing timely and predictable funding. I hope that this initiative on designing innovative financing solutions by the government of India will bring in the much needed funding support in order for African countries to continue their fight for their development. In considering all of the possible innovative financing solutions and taking into account that this funding is from one developing country to another, we believe that funding through the Exim Bank of India from the Indian perspective, even though the funding is concessional, the real benefit lies in the export of Indian products and expertise through the local content requirements. As the Kingdom of Eswatini, we look forward to benefit a lot from this initiative, in particular funding towards our key development areas, which include agriculture, tourism, ICT, energy, and the health sector. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to thank you for the support that we continue to receive from the Indian government. Over the past decade, the government of India has supported Eswatini's development through a number of initiatives, from funding of projects, investment, and grant support. Ladies and gentlemen, with these remarks, the journey towards strengthening existing collaborative arrangements and fostering new cross-continent partnerships for the development of Africa has begun. The path we have chosen will be possible if all stakeholders are involved to play their part. Coordination and leadership in the highest levels will be important to ensure the strategies and goals we set for ourselves are achieved and yield their potential. I thank you.
No, Hasha is muted. You can't hear.
Madam, you are muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Excellency. And now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. M. Senthilnathan, Chairman and Managing Director, ECGC Limited. Mr. Senthilnathan is also the Chairman Trustee of the National Export Insurance Account, a trust set up by the Government of India to promote project exports from India, and has an experience of more than 33 years in the insurance sector. He is also the member of the Management Committee of the Bern Union, which is the International Union of Credit and Investment Insurers. Sir, if you would like to, a couple of questions which I thought we would like to take your expertise about is the buyer's credit under the NEIA. This program is a unique financing mechanism that provides a safe mode of non-recourse financing option to Indian exporters and serves as an effective market tool to traditional as well as new markets. In view of the decreasing trend in bilateral concessional debt finance in Africa, do you think, sir, that the BCNEIA can emerge as a major channel for financing of businesses and projects in the region? Also wanted to have your perspective on the Indian financial institutions and corporates. How do they view Africa as an investment destination? And what, in your view, is the potential for financing commercial activities of Indian exporters or corporates in these regions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm extremely sorry we had some technical issue in joining the meeting time. Yes, as you said, that buyer credit from Exim Bank can emerge as one of the viable tools for bridging a part of the gap, because the needs of Africa as a continent is very huge. Definitely buyer credit from Exim Bank is a significant tool in bridging some of the needs. But since this requirement is very huge, at least $100 billion, $100 billion per year for next at least 7 to 10 years, we have to try all other avenues of funding, where Exim Bank, BCNEIA, or this buyer credit also can be a part. Instead of 100% from buyer credit, it can be a part of the total funding, where some others are also involved. As you can see, any buyer credit from Exim Bank or from any other development banks, there will always be a credit insurance angle to these projects. If there are 2-3 parties involved in funding the arrangement, it enhances the credit risk profile of the project, and in turn, what happens is credit insurers or the government-backed insurance facilities finds it convenient to give a long-term political and commercial risk insurance. So from that point of view, it is all the more important that though buyer credit can be a very viable and significant tool, it is also important to ensure that participation from other sources of funding, to some extent at least. It will definitely help the project beneficiary also, and also it will help the all the stakeholders. As we see more and more projects in very critical sectors, which will give them a lot of employment potential in the project beneficiary country, especially in tourism, hospitality, transportation projects, city decongestion projects, which will help their industries to grow, or maybe transportation logistics to grow. It will benefit all the stakeholders to complete the projects in time, complete the financing arrangements in time, and also ensure that the economic benefits are derived by society at large, which in turn will give a dividend that there will be more and more stakeholders will be interested in joining the process. One. Second thing is, in the last 5 years, as we can see that Africa has emerged as one of the beacon of hope for growing trade relationship from all parts of the world. Indians especially find it very sort of homecoming. It's a second home for Indians. Many Indian families have settled in Africa. So we find that there is a lot of interest in Indian companies to invest in Africa. One of the notable examples can be your Airtel, which has got a very huge presence in Africa. I feel going forward, many of this service sector, especially information, communication technology service sector, which has adopted this work from home or work anywhere from the world process, slowly Indian companies also will find interesting opportunities in Africa to tap talent, to opt them as sort of workforce in the global companies that emerges out of India, and also ensure that services rolled out from India as a value addition component in Africa, and it benefits the largest section of society. A significant value addition can be there in communication and remittance protocol. Africa and as a continent receives significant amount of remittance from the expatriates, African expatriates global back to their home. And I believe that a path-breaking innovation has been done in terms of remittance economy in M-Pesa by Airtel. There are more and more innovations will come where Indian companies can play a huge role. And the next one is education, as we have seen in telemedicine, where the doctors from All India Institute of Medical Sciences can guide that very challenging operations, guide the doctors doing challenging operations in parts of Africa. I think the facilities like this can be rolled out across Africa so that their critical needs in terms of medical services can be met. Of course, the partnership in terms of COVID vaccination is something great. But going forward after the COVID, the requirement of population in terms of surgical services and medical services very critical, where telemedicine can play a huge role. And given the fact that the African continent is huge and this the communities are settled in various villages, so the telemedicine can play a huge role where Indian companies can use their expertise. When it comes to transportation and transportation equipments, I feel that Africa will be, once this African free continental trade emerges as in a much better form than what it is now, more countries sign the treaty. Definitely there can be manufacturing bases set up by Indian companies instead of transporting entirely manufactured vehicles from here, can be set up in some of the countries so that the entire African continent can be served and also serviced these requirements. So I'm sure there is a lot of interesting opportunities opening up for Indian companies, and I'm sure they are also actively looking at it. And as a credit insurers, and we are also tuned to play a better role. And as Exim Bank, as I know that we are also waiting with enough resources to ensure that we partner with Africa for the mutual benefit. I am gung-ho about Africa, that much I must say. And incidentally, I am also on the board of African Trade Insurance. Then I find that going forward, there will be a lot of opportunities to work with African institutions like Trade and Development Bank, African Trade Insurance, maybe Afrexim Bank, and other institutions which have got a larger and deep footprint in Africa, so that they can we can find a mutually assured business potential and do for the benefit of all the stakeholders. Okay. I think I trust I answered your queries. Yeah. Madam, you are muted again. I think please unmute.
So sorry. No, thank you so much, Mr. Senthilnathan, and your enthusiasm and optimism, is really contagious, and keeping our fingers crossed on that. I would like to now invite Dr. George Donker, President and Chairman, ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, which is a regional financial institution owned by 15 ECOWAS member states. Dr. Donker has led and implemented several strategic initiatives in the bank. Sir, in your view, how could innovative financing be effectively used to develop resilient value chains in Africa? What could be the strategies which can be adopted by the organization to efficiently mobilize resources, especially in the time of COVID? Also, in terms of this aggravating financial infrastructure deficit, which is being faced by the continent through shrinking of affordable financing, especially in the context of increasing debt vulnerabilities in African countries, how do you suggest these issues could be addressed through introduction of innovative financing products? Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Hasha. Distinguished guests of honor, distinguished panelists, let me start by expressing my profound sense of gratitude to India Exim Bank for the opportunity to be part of this important event. Before we commence, let me also take this opportunity to thank the government of India through Exim Bank for the various supports that they have extended to the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development over the years. We have a very strong partnership over the years, and this partnership continues to grow. And we believe that in the years ahead of us, this will be strengthened and consolidated. Thank you once again, the government of India. Let me also take this opportunity to express our deep sense of condolence and sympathy to the many lives that were lost during the recent surge of the COVID-19. Even though, as we are all aware, every country was, affected, and yet the recent surge of the COVID-19 in India is an incident which was unfortunate. And I want to take this platform to express our condolences and sympathies to the government of India and all the families that lost their loved ones. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored this morning to take the floor at this plenary session of the 16th Confederation of India Industry Exim Bank Conclave, which is taking place virtually, of course, also in India, on the theme, Designing Innovative Financing Solutions for Doing Business in Africa to address such a distinguished audience. The Economic Community of West Africa States, ECOWAS, was originally formed as an ambitious regional trade bloc aimed at boosting intra-regional trade through economic, financial, and regional integration. The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, which is EBID, being the regional development finance institution of the ECOWAS community, is mandated to foster a fully integrated economic system to reap the benefits of international trade. To date, Exim Bank India has granted lines of credit totaling over $1 billion to support both our public and private sectors while providing financing for critical infrastructure projects in the ECOWAS region. In order to facilitate trade and regional integration, ladies and gentlemen, as contemplated by the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFTA, which was ratified on January 20, 2021 by the 36 African countries, regional institutions and governments must work together to provide manufacturing, build regional value chains, and develop the service and technology sectors. And in response to the needs of the African business landscape, the bank, that is ECOWAS Bank, has an SME line of credit which focuses both on the regional and national dimensions of SME growth, especially highly exposed SME segments within the ECOWAS community. The bank has also set up a trade finance unit, which is responsible for minimizing some of the risks associated with trade finance intermediation by lower shares of trade finance institutions, ranging below 10% compared to almost 20% in Southern Africa. EBID intends to significantly increase trade finance transactions in its portfolio by multiplying its efforts in this area. Today's session, ladies and gentlemen, presents an opportunity to touch on several pertinent issues. First, on the scope of venture capital private equity in project investment in Africa, one must say yes, the world's second fastest growing region, Africa, experienced 4.6% average annual GDP growth from 2000 to 2016. This robust economic backdrop has been a crucial driver of Africa's venture capital industry, creating a positive economic environment to catalyze innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment. According to African Venture Capital Association, the total number and value of VCDs reports on the continent reached a 6-year record high in 2019, and the value of VCDs reported in Africa reached $1.4 billion in 2019, a record high. It is therefore instructive to note that one factor contributing to private equity's resilience in Africa beginning in 2020 has been invested in businesses that provide essential or emergency services, including healthcare, food production, and education sectors, which continue to operate during lockdowns. African financial technology, fintech, is another sector that has historically attracted private equity. Secondly, private-public participation is already recognized as a key element in narrowing infrastructure gaps as it prevents crowding of private sector investment in infrastructure in Africa. At a workshop held on 10 September 2020 by the AFDB titled Supporting Public-Private Partnership in Africa, AFDB ready to scale up infrastructure, it was revealed that 5 African countries, namely Burkina Faso, South Africa, Morocco, Nigeria, Egypt, and Ghana, accounted for more than 50% of all successful PPP activity from 2008 to 2018. This speaks to the conduciveness of the investment regime in the region. Thirdly, African countries are turning to private finance to close the infrastructure gap in the region. So private sector finance is certainly well sought after. It must be noted that the growth of export credit programs such as European Credit Agency model transactions has provided African governments with alternative sources of funds and help to diversify trading partners for countries that have tended to remain stuck in colonial patterns. Ladies and gentlemen, having discussed the investment landscape, let me take this opportunity to highlight some important areas of improvement for your consideration. 1, supporting the implementation of regional trade agreements through adequate financial and technical support. 2, devoting trade-related assistance to trade facilitation, especially through the simplification of customs procedures. 3, targeting trade-related infrastructure development, both at the regional and national level, with a special focus on trade corridors. 4, supporting access to new technologies for the informal trade sector, especially financing digitalization of SMEs. Designing innovative solutions to doing business in Africa is very key, as the traditional engagement with African countries regarding investment in closing the infrastructure gaps on the continent are proving untenable. It is my hope that today's discussions will demonstrate that African governments are open to a variety of financing options as a way of diversifying their sources of financing while being efficient and reducing the time spent in implementing projects. While looking forward to fruitful and enlightening discussions, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Donkor. Now, may I request Mr. Solomon Quaynor, Vice President, Private Sector, Infrastructure and Industrialization, AFDB. Mr. Quaynor has over 25 years experience in development finance and investment banking. He is an emerging market specialist investor with experience investing across FIs, including banks and NBFIs, TMT, infrastructure, energy, manufacturing, agribusiness, and services. Mr. Quaynor, infrastructure investment is necessary for regional integration in Africa, especially in the context of AFCFTA. Can you highlight some of the key initiatives taken by your organization to promote intra-regional trade in the African region? What are the key factors that could further enhance regional trade integration? Also, as estimated by AFDB, assets under management by African institutional investors are expected to rise to US $1.8 trillion by 2020. How can we tap these assets to substantially close the infrastructure gap? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bangari. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to expand, my intervention, to not only look at the continental free trade area and how that would support, key regional infrastructure investments, but really talk about, innovative finance and solutions which we need for national and regional infrastructure. And also, tapping into the capital markets, which is, also critical for new innovations going forward to both attract global investment funds, but also the $1.8 trillion you mentioned of, local investment pools from sovereign wealth funds, from African pensions, and also from African insurance pools. But to begin with, let me thank the Confederation of Indian Industry and Exim Bank for hosting this important conversation about economic linkages between Africa and India. This is especially the case as you're doing it at a time that India is unusually very hard hit by the COVID pandemic. And as Dr. George Donker mentioned, we are with you in spirit and pray that India will recover soon from this harsh COVID wave. As we're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has inflicted unprecedented adverse health and economic impacts globally. Africa has not been spared either from the twin shocks. And Mrs. Bangari, recounted, some facts, in her introductory statements, but let me give it some additional emphasis. We had a recession in 2020 in Africa, and we have decelerated growth in 2021. We have very high debt levels from the emergency response in 2020 to the pandemic. And as Mrs. Bandari mentioned, debt to GDP has really gone from about 60% in 2019 to over 75% at the end of 2020. And this has also resulted in limited fiscal space for a lot of African governments. Lastly, we have low vaccination rates with unclear paths to resolving this, both because of the financial burden, the limited fiscal space I've just mentioned, and now limited vaccine supply, especially with the challenges going on in India. And also, Africa is beginning to actually be subjected to new COVID waves from new variants. So a very challenging, context for Africa. All the same, Africa needs financing to promote private sector growth, create jobs, provide social protection for vulnerable groups, and drive inclusive growth. The pandemic has widened Africa's financing gap to a whopping $345 billion, and hence innovative solutions are needed. There's no one big bank. We have to really look at multiple innovations, especially scalable innovations. India and Africa share a long and consistent history of economic and development partnerships. And India is Africa's third largest national trading partner, as the Minister for Mauritius mentioned, with linkages that have had notable successes for both the African continent and also for India. 4 years ago, the African Development Bank successfully organized its 52nd annual meetings in the beautiful city of Ahmedabad, the home of Mahatma Gandhi. And we're very proud that India is a shareholder in the African Development Bank, and we need to build on this. So infrastructure-led recovery from this pandemic is key for Africa. It's going to be an absolute necessity. So I will next present what AFDB is doing to enhance the investment regime for PPPs and the participation of global institutional capital in private and PPP infrastructure projects across Africa. So with respect to PPPs, the AFDB is doing the following. First, we're advising African countries on PPPs in a threefold manner. Upstream, to create a conducive enabling environment for PPPs through the appropriate policies and laws, and setting up PPP units as the counterparts to interested investors. Midstream as well, to house and infrastructure project preparation facilities, which I'll touch on in a second. And in the future, we plan to provide transaction advisory support as well. And lastly, we look at the downstream in terms of directly financing projects and also providing risk mitigation instruments. And this is very important because financing is not the only issue in creating the conducive environment for PPPs. In addition, the African Development Bank hosts the Africa Legal Support Facility, which several of you may not know about, but which amongst others provides legal advisory services to African governments in the structuring and negotiations of complex commercial transactions such as infrastructure and PPPs. So that is on the conducive environment, but we've got to create a pipeline of PPP projects as well. So the AFDB is also engaged with infrastructure PPP project preparation and development. And let me just talk a bit about a few of the things we're doing. So through the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility, which supports African countries and regional economic communities to prepare regional infrastructure projects across the infrastructure space, including energy, transport, ICT, and transboundary water. Since 2005, this facility has essentially mobilized downstream investments of about $24 billion. AFDB also, realizing the gap in creating the pipeline of bankable projects, set up Africa 50, which is an infrastructure PPP project development and financing facility based out of Casablanca in Morocco, but Pan-African. We have also partnered with Exim Bank and the State Bank of India to establish the Kukuza Project Development Company, which Mrs. Bangari mentioned. More partnerships are needed, in this area to create a pipeline of bankable infrastructure and PPP projects that global institutional investors will be interested in coming into. With respect to capital markets development to attract participation of global institutional funds, our work has spanned our direct involvement to deepen debt capital markets across Africa. My good friend Tadez talked about what we've done in terms of the exchanges. We have 20 exchanges, that focus, both on equity and debt capital markets. But I want to just, focus for a second on debt capital markets because that's probably where we can get the depth of capital and also create, the right dynamics in the debt capital markets to facilitate interest from global investment funds. So some of the things we're doing, it's not too dissimilar from what Tadez mentioned about the Trade and Development Bank. We're supporting the enabling environment and policy reforms for debt capital markets, working with African governments. We have also issued bonds in the debt capital markets. And in our case, we are AAA rated internationally. So we look to actually price below the government issuance spread. We have several bonds in various African countries, and part of the reason we've done these issuances is to deepen these bond markets and increase investor confidence in these markets. In South Africa, for example, we were the first supranational to launch a bond in the domestic rand market. And we've also issued bonds in other markets such as Botswana, Uganda, and Nigeria. We also support demonstration capital market transactions. For example, in terms of green bonds and social bonds, last year we supported Nedbank in a green tier 2 capital bond linked with the Sustainable Development Goals, a first of its kind in South Africa. And not only did we work with Nedbank in structuring the instrument, but we also acted as an anchor investor, sending positive signals to the market on the issuance, and it was oversubscribed. We also have sponsored the African Domestic Bond Fund through the provision of seed funding. This was the first multi-jurisdictional African sovereign bond exchange traded fund, giving exposure to institutional investors in different African local currency sovereign bond markets. So these are some of the things that we've done really to support global investors in having exposure to the debt capital markets in Africa. However, our work is not only intended to attract global institutional funds, but also domestic and regional funds in Africa. In 2019, the estimated aggregate assets under management for African sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and insurance investment pools was about $1.8 trillion. And that is what Mrs. Bangari was referring to. So connecting these funds to infrastructure financing is key, and our work in this regard includes, for example, in Nigeria, we have supported a pioneering monoline credit guarantee company called InfraCredit Nigeria, which essentially credit enhances bonds, for infrastructure projects, starting off with brownfield projects, to crowd in the $30 billion domestic pension market into infrastructure financing. And we partnered with the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Africa Finance Corporation, and also the Private Infrastructure Development Group of the UK, to support this model. But it's not the only model. And we plan to replicate this model along with the Pitch Group of the UK in other select markets across Africa. But it's not the only, innovative model we're looking at. We've also invested in what is called the Nigeria Infrastructure Debt Fund. This is the first and the only listed local currency infrastructure debt fund in Africa. It's a closed-end fund, domiciled in Nigeria and denominated in local currency. And this is another example, really, of an investment, the infrastructure asset class in a listed security that assures exits and predictable returns. And we're looking to replicate this also in other markets. But there's some other innovations. Let me just touch on them, very, very briefly. We're exploring infrastructure asset recycling with Africa 50. This is another way of crowding in both, global and domestic regional funds into brownfield assets that have predictable, cash flows. We also, as AFDB, utilize our partial credit guarantee. We're AAA rated globally to credit enhance, bonds and loans to crowd in investors who otherwise would not be willing to take the risks in African infrastructure and PPP assets. But we also provide what we call partial risk guarantees, which are really counter guarantees of government obligation, especially during this period of limited fiscal space. A lot of infrastructure investors would like to be assured that they're not taking undue exposure to government payment risk. And these are some of the innovations that we're working on. So we at the African Development Bank, Africa's Infrastructure and PPP Bank, the AFDB's Asia External Representation Office in Japan has been supporting and participating in the conclave since 2014. Global institutional investors should be assured that the groundwork for conducive regimes for PPP and their participation are being made, and attractive investment opportunities will be available. But I'll be totally remiss if I did not talk about one specific area for which Africa is seriously asking for partnership with India. And this is in the space of pharmaceutical manufacturing, including vaccine manufacturing, and also healthcare infrastructure development. We at AFDB have worked with McKinsey to develop an action plan, not just for the AFDB, but for really Africa when it comes to pharmaceutical manufacturing, including vaccine manufacturing. We are also working to develop, a healthcare infrastructure strategy, which we have to go through our governance process to get approved. But let me focus on the pharmaceutical manufacturing briefly. We strongly believe that this, we have to pay attention to economies of scale, and hence all 54 countries cannot go into the same level of pharmaceutical manufacturing. And this is why we're supporting the Continental Free Trade Area, as well as the Africa CDC. And these are two Pan-African, key institutions that we have provided direct support to actually help them establish, their institutional, setup and realize their objectives. We're working with both to actually encourage, pharmaceutical manufacturing, including vaccine manufacturing, on a regional hub basis. And this is an area in which, there are existing pharmaceutical companies in Africa that can joint venture with Indian pharmaceutical companies. The Minister of Finance from Mauritius talked about the outsourcing the outsourcing potential. We are not trying to do import substitution. We're trying to establish minimum security of supply. During our annual meetings, which were concluded, at the end of June, this was such an important topic that we had a knowledge event for our over 80 member countries with various ministers of finance attending. At this point in time, even outside of vaccine manufacturing, we plan to invest about $3 billion over the next decade in pharmaceutical manufacturing, of which $2 billion is for related, infrastructure, especially transport, logistics, and also appropriate, power. But $1 billion is for pharmaceutical manufacturing, and we expect to use that to actually leverage and crowd in about $6 billion of financing, both in terms of equity and debt financing. And I just want to leave this message with our friends from India. This is an explicit area where we would like to really partner, and I say this with great confidence from the African Union, Commission, the entire African Union, the African Development Bank, our partners, here present, TDB, AfriExim, and Africa Finance Corporation, Africa 50, and others. This is an area in which we are ready and explicitly focused really on partnering. So thank you once again for the opportunity to share what AFDB is doing in these areas, and happy to answer questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Quaynor. And it was indeed very interesting to hear from you in terms of what AFDB is doing. And I'm sure AFDB is a role model for many of us to follow. I take your point in terms of pharmaceutical manufacturing and healthcare. And you've raised a very interesting perspective in terms of hub manufacturing. As you rightly said, you cannot really have all 54 countries having manufacturing capacities for vaccine. It's very interesting for Exim Bank because today morning, in fact, today afternoon, we have also released our report on healthcare, India-Africa healthcare sector, where we are talking about prospects and opportunities. And I would like to assure you that from India, especially from India Exim Bank, we are totally focused on this particular sector for India as well as African continent. And just last week, we had a meeting, a roundtable with all the vaccine manufacturers in the country. I'm sure we were talking more about capacity expansion in the country, but I'd be very happy to take it forward and see how they would be interested in investing and how AFDB we could seek your help, or as Exim Bank, or what we could do to sort of facilitate this investment of healthcare. Thank you so much. Now, may I like to invite Mr. Saravana Kumar A, Managing Director, Bank of Baroda, Kenya Limited. Mr. Saravana Kumar is a seasoned banker and has a rich experience of working in branch operations, credit, international operations, marketing, agriculture, treasury operations, and business development. Mr. Saravana Kumar, if I may ask your perspective in terms of what are the sectors which Indian companies are active across the continent, and how can India and Indian companies increase their footprint in Africa? Also, in terms of Indian financial institutions, how do we view Africa as an investment destination for Indian companies? And what would be the potential for financing commercial activities of Indian corporates in the African space? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harsha. His Excellencies, distinguished panelists, distinguished dignitaries, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all. So these sectors where the Indian companies are very active in this African continent, there are so many sectors I can quote, but I can mention significantly few areas. One is the pharmaceutical. As you rightly mentioned in your address, the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry is one area where there are huge opportunities are there. More than 30 to 40% of the requirement in most of the countries in Africa are imported from India. In Kenya alone, where I am located, More than 50 companies from India, they are operating under pharmacy. All the big names are operating here, and healthcare is another segment where most of the African people are going to India to take the treatment. So this is another area where the Indian companies, particularly the chain of hospitals like Apollo and Max Healthcare and other leading hospitals, can think of opening their hospitals and other treatment centers. And the other major segment is this motor and vehicles, particularly these two-wheelers and four-wheelers. Already the big names like Tata, Mahindra and Mahindra, Ashok Leyland, they are operating here. And we as a commercial bank, established in African countries for long years, almost 6 decades old we are. And we are also in the plan of entering tie-up with these companies to make the asset finance a success story in this part of the country. And this engineering and construction, here also there are good number of Indian leaders like L&D, Shabuji, Palanji, and all other companies are working. And power transmission is another big segment. Energy, telecom, Airtel is here, electrical and electronics, consumer products, all those are here. Even in agriculture field, there are good number of companies are here. So now these India-based companies, they have already started. So now this is time to establish themselves, to improve their footprints in other part of the African countries. So what I presume is they have to create the tie-ups to facilitate and provide modern and adequate and affordable energy systems to meet the considerable African energy challenges, particularly in solar and wind segment. There are good scope is there because in Kenya, the power energy is coming from geothermal and hydro. So these two segments are welcome from Indian companies. And a scale up of agribusiness in key agricultural commodity value chains, like investing in agriculture productivity. From this part of country, there are huge exports are happening. Particularly, Kenya is a country where this is second largest producer of tea and coffee, and this is the third largest exporter of cut flowers to European market. So here our companies can look into it, and particularly this animal husbandry. Here also this is the segment. And improve the quality of life for the people of Africa in the aspects of education, health, and access to market opportunities, and aggressively harness areas to venture like pharmaceutical, hospital, IT, fintech, green investment, to mention but a few. Improve industrial manufacturing or assembling fronts, and enhance transport and telecommunication infrastructure. Here, you are aware, Bank of Baroda, we are the commercial bank and a leading public sector bank. And we are having a wide network of more than 8,200 branches in India alone after the amalgamation of erstwhile Vijaya and Dena Bank. And at present, we are serving around 131 million customers across 19 countries. So though we are present in 19 countries, initially, first time Bank of Baroda opened its first overseas branch in Kenya, Africa. So that is a significant opening. And in Kenya, we opened in 1953, Uganda 1953, Tanzania 1956, Mauritius 1962. You can see before the independence of these countries, in these 4 countries, we have started our operations. Almost now it is 6 decades, more than 60 years experience in African continent. And we do have presence in Seychelles and Botswana. And since we are the oldest bank, and we are serving the customers in all segments, in MSME, retail, agriculture, and all corporate clients. And we are having a wide network of branches of 47. We are taking care of the NRE requirement business of our expatriates who are living for a long time or who are settled here. And also our Indian embassy in this part, we are closely working with our Indian embassies. In each of the countries, we are having Indian Business Forum. This Indian Business Forum is very actively meeting at regular interval. So we could able to understand the requirement of Indian companies operating in this part. So we can able to fulfill this their requirement at regular interval. So I can convey my sincere thanks to Indian embassies operating in these countries. So they are really very active and coordinating to get the things done in this part. And also we are actively participating in various local chambers. For example, we are golden member in Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. There are good number of local Kenyans who are importing from India we are supporting. So since we are bank, we are having strong presence both in India as well as in Africa. So this is very easily possible. So for the investors from India, I can say this Africa is real very good destination for investment because Africa is having a very good opportunity. Most of the African countries nowadays, they are having favorable economic policies which are very much conducive to international trade relationship. And apart from that, 6 out of the 10 fastest growing countries, it is in Africa, particularly in East Africa. I can say a few: South Sudan, Uganda, and Rwanda. And also the ease of doing business, these countries growing up. For example, Mauritius is top the list with the 13th rank, Rwanda 38, and Kenya 56. So this is making the investment more attractive in this part of the country. And also more than 50% of the population in Africa are under 20. So this is making the continent as a youngest continent in the world. And the other good point is the growing urbanization. It is expectation that more than 50% of the population in African continent is going to live in urban areas by 2050. So this is posing a very huge opportunity in real estate business. And another big synergy, I can call it as an intergovernmental synergy within Africa. For example, I have to mention about this East African community. This East African community is consisting of 6 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. So if we start the Indian investors coming in this part and if they start their venture in one country, with this intergovernmental coordination, they can quickly expand their business in other countries within the same community. For example, in East African country, there are synergy in the form of common external tariff, duty-free trade between the member countries, common custom practices, reduced telephone tariff, and a single tourist visa for East African countries, East African passport system. And I can, as a banker, I can mention there is a East African payment system is established. Like in India, we are having real-time gross settlement. Here within the East African countries, the real-time settlement is possible in their respective currencies. So this making the trade very attractive in this part. And also the major segment in these countries are, particularly the Honorable President of Kenya has announced 4 pillars in Kenya, like affordable housing and food security, health for all, manufacturing. So these are all some of the segment where the Indian investor can look into. Now quickly, let me explain how, as a commercial bank, Bank of Baroda can help these investors who are coming from India to establish their setup in Africa. With a wide range of products and strong backup from Bank of Baroda India and sound capital base. So since we are here for last 6 decades, the accumulated profit, we are having a huge capital base, and we can fulfill all trade finance needs of the investors. The bank is having all sort of products to support the import and export by MSME and startup clients. And we are having presence in 6 countries in Africa. So there are so many common clients we can found. So those want to establish in other countries also we can help. And also we present in 19 countries. So this is a very good chance. And particularly those Indian companies, they want to provide guarantee and bid bond. They want to bid for African countries. We are making the provision because many of the government organization in Africa is looking for guarantee from local banks. So we, by obtaining counter guarantee from Indian bank, we are providing the guarantee. And as a bank established here for the new ventures, we are supporting them with the help of the consultant to how to open their operation, establish their KRA PIN and other things. And also we have in the recent part sponsored some of our clients to India. They have participated in Vibrant Gujarat Summit, so they can understand. As a bank, not only we are helping the Indian community operating here, we are largely interested to develop the local Kenyans. They are very much interested in making trade relationship. So Bank of Baroda, since we are present and the largest bank operating in Kenya from India, definitely we are helping the improvement of trade relationship between African countries and India. And many times our economic minister is insisting for it. We are closely working on it. So with time constraint, let me stop at this point. So let us again interact during our question and answer session.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Sarvana Kumar. And it's really encouraging for you to have such positive views on Africa investment and how Bank of Baroda, Kenya could help. I'm sure my offices in Africa would be in touch with you because, as you mentioned, you are operating in 6 countries. And as Exim India, I think we operate in almost all the countries in Africa. And I'm sure the intervention which would be required would be from all angles, including Government of India support as well as commercial. With this, may I request Mr. Sahil Patel, Vice President, International Business, Ashoka Buildcon, to please maybe speak to us for a few minutes. Mr. Patel is an engineer by qualification and has a professional experience of over a decade in international business development and project financing in Africa, Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Mr. Patel, my questions are very similar to what I asked earlier. In your view, what are the type of interventions from the host governments in Africa that safeguard or support the interest of foreign investors? And again, what are the sectors where Indian companies are active across the continent? And how can India and Indian companies increase their footprint in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Madam. Good afternoon to Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Rickenberg. Esteemed panelists who have chosen to master their own choices of profession, a good day to you as well. I'll just quickly introduce my organization. Ashoka Buildcon Limited is poised to enter the developing markets in Africa as a matured EPC contractor from India. We deliver quality solutions and in scheduled timelines. As a company, we are having a net worth of $1.2 billion, wherein the parent company has booked revenues exceeding $700 million in the previous fiscal. We have a proven might with more than skilled manpower of exceeding 4,000 people. We have initiated our international sojourn in Maldives, where we have secured 3 projects, executed one of them, and 2 are ongoing, with the prestigious support of India Exim Bank in collaboration with ECGC Insurance under the Bias Credit Scheme. As an EPC contractor, we operate in executing infrastructure works for roads, railways, buildings and factories, power transmission lines and distribution, water and sanitation infrastructure, smart cities, and digital transformation infrastructure. We look forward to a formidable association with again, India Exim Bank to support us in our sojourn in Africa under our Look Africa policy, which we have just started in 2021. We would also reach out to the regional banks and financing partners like Afri Exim Bank, TDB, DBSA, EBID, African Development Bank, and even the ECOWAS Commission in supporting financing for our projects. Our Indian banks that have penetrated largely in the African continent, we will count on them for their banking support. Now, coming from a background, Ashoka Buildcon is one of the largest PPP players in India, having almost 40 PPP assets under its portfolio. So coming from that background, what I would like to determine to the audience over here is that every African country is looking at PPP projects, but what essentially a PPP investor will look at is a track record, one, and yes, it is an investment. So we will be looking at expatriation of profits. In this context, we believe that every government should initiate their first PPP project in their own public sector undertaking or state-owned enterprise, wherein they can show profitability and bounce on it or downsell it to asset majors like us. In this scenario, Mozambique has really shown the way along with South Africa. In India, we can have the model of IRCTC initiated by Indian Railways to take up PPP projects in Africa. We can model these scenarios and take up PPP projects going forward. wherein the sell down of the stake initially will improvise the situation of how to create innovative financing mechanisms in PPP assets. Second point I would like to mention to the questions posed by you is regional banks. We are really counting on the regional banks to consider commercial financing of projects which are under SOEs, not backed by sovereign guarantees. We want the regional banks to look at the quality of the project, the turnaround, the payback, and I'm sure that you can bank on India Exim Bank and other international multilateral agencies to finance you to take these projects forward. As we have seen, India Exim Bank has also supported. We have seen a lot of traction in terms of financing to EBID, DBSA, and AfriExim, and we are counting on more such financing to enter in our role as EPC contractors. And also, one point we would like to highlight is we would want to see India Exim Bank come up with financing under the green funds or the blue funds. Some kind of traction on that part in Africa would be keenly observed by EPC contractors like us. Definitely concessional terms on buyer's credit financing for these kind of projects would definitely make a move forward. We can gain a lot of significance. Now, under our Look Africa policy, I want to highlight three key points that we are looking at in Africa. What has the COVID pandemic done? It has lost a lot of lives. We have suffered on health infrastructure. And second is loss of livelihood. Under these two contexts, we have come up with mechanisms wherein we can undertake projects which will serve to a lot of greater good. One would be agriculture. From India, we bring the strength of agricultural technology to Africa. We can do land mechanization, farm mechanization, warehousing setup, roads, power requirements, water requirements, all under one roof. That would definitely create a lot of livelihood for the people going forward. Second is the influx of smart infrastructure coming in from India. Now, India is slowly mastering the art of smart infrastructure. This is something we would like to take to Africa. Even the digitalization of health infrastructure would go a long way in reducing the numbers that are being affected by the pandemic. It also enhances promotion of skilled manpower. And when you look at advanced purchase agreements, the projects become fundable. Even if you take it under a buyer's credit mechanism or sovereign risk associated with, the risk is actually standing only at the project level. It is not going to your GDP. And the third very important part is what we have devised is building infrastructure for companies wherein we tie up with Indian small scale and medium scale enterprises to take them to Africa, wherein the infrastructure is constructed by our group. They can bank on the quality of infrastructure and take those Indian entrepreneurs to Africa. We have been reached out by a lot of Indian IT companies that really want office space in Africa, but they don't know where to set their office up. So if we give them seed capital under the financing mechanism, or if we are able to provide them with a rental, the government on that side, with the rental yield from these companies for say 5 years, then it reduces the debt burden of that country automatically and infuses investment. So
Mr. Patel, I'm so sorry. I think we are
totally
off the time, but this is very interesting. And as you rightly mentioned, which earlier speakers also spoke about, revenue generating projects where you could sort of rely on the cash flows. Maybe those type of projects could be easily amenable to commercial financing structures. And that's something I'm sure we will all look forward to.
Thank you.
Now, may I request Ms. Melanie Lawrence, Senior Manager, Guarantees and Specialized Finance from AfriExim to speak to us. Again, your views on AFCFTA and what are the challenges which Africa's development faces and requires cross-border solutions. All yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon to our host, Deputy MD, Ms. Harsha Bangari, esteemed guests of honor, distinguished fellow panelists, and other guests. On behalf of the President and Chairman of the Board of AfriExim Bank, His Excellency Professor Benedict Orama, we wish to express our thanks to India Exim and CII for inviting AfriExim Bank to participate in this event. Also, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the support of India Exim to AfriExim Bank both as a shareholder of the bank and also by providing lines of credit support over the years. Just by way of brief background, Afreximbank is a multilateral development financial institution with 51 African countries as its participating member states. Our strategy is focused on the promotion and financing of intra-African trade, facilitating industrialization and export development, and ensuring access to trade finance across the African continent. As mentioned by other panelists, there's a wave of industrialization taking place across the African continent, largely because many African economies are moving away from becoming heavily commodity dependent towards taking the necessary steps towards decommoditizing the exports and implementing industrialization strategies. However, one of the key factors inhibiting industrialization, as we have seen, has been insufficient access to infrastructure in power, water, and transportation that will allow such companies to thrive in industries with strong comparative advantages. It's very evident the need is there. In fact, there is much to be done, which can only be achieved by institutions like ourselves, working together and bringing in our trusted global partners, as strongly emphasized by previous panelists. Afreximbank has been at the forefront of leveraging international financing into Africa, using its borrowing, syndication, and guarantee products. As mentioned, the pandemic crisis has highlighted the importance of food and health sectors for all countries. Africa is, however, uniquely positioned to further leverage its rich agricultural resources by improving basic infrastructure and efficiency, as well as agro-processing capacity. However, more resources will be needed to strengthen public health sectors with the support of development partners. Africa needs to strengthen intra-regional trade, and African countries need to make a more concerted efforts to harmonize their trade-related regulations, customs controls, to reduce both tariff and non-tariff barriers, which would improve infrastructure and connectivity to lower logistics costs. Afreximbank has been implementing various financing and non-financing programs to enable African businesses to be prepared and to take advantage of the AfCFTA, boost intra-African trade, partnering with African governments and international manufacturers and processors to promote value addition in member countries. Some of our flagship initiatives include the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, the AfCFTA Adjustment Facility, the African Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme, and other trade and industrial infrastructure related programs, which constitute the backbone of the AfCFTA. Of course, we cannot ignore the impact of COVID-19 and what it has done to the economies, some of which were already in fragile states. Afreximbank responded swiftly. In March 2020, we launched a 3 billion pandemic trade impact mitigation facility, which we call PATIMFA, which is to help African sovereigns, commercial banks, central banks, and corporates to weather the impact of the crisis. To date, the support that we've given has far exceeded this initial amount, which clearly demonstrates the need that exists. In addition, in September 2020, we launched a 100 million overdraft facility to enable African states to procure COVID-19 related medical resources through the African Medical Supplies Platform, which is an online marketplace for the sale and purchase of medical supplies and equipment. In November 2020, Afreximbank, the ITFC, and BADEA launched a 1.5 billion collaborative COVID-19 pandemic response facility called COPRIFA to support African economies with rapid financial assistance to reduce the impact of COVID-19. And I think what's been the most significant is the catalytic role Afreximbank has played in vaccine procurement financing on the African continent. We provided a 2 billion guarantee on behalf of the African Union member states. And this led to the historic COVID-19 vaccine procurement agreement that was signed in March this year by the African Union's COVID-19 Vaccine Acquisition Task Team, which secured 400 million doses of the J&J vaccine for the continent. And this is a critical step towards achieving the continental goal of vaccinating at least 60% of Africans. What we have done, while significant, is merely a fraction of what is needed on the continent, given the significant financing gap that some of the fellow panelists have spoken about. We therefore need the collaborative efforts of all our partners to pool our collective resources to be able to mobilize the much needed support for Africa. I think in the interest of time, Madam Chair, let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lawrence. And I'm sure I think we will speak separately and we have lots of common interest to discuss. Now, may I request Mr. Parag Bhargava, who's DGM Business Development AFCON's infrastructure, to please maybe spend a few minutes with us. Specifically, Mr. Bhargava, in terms of, again, what type of interventions from the host governments in Africa do you think will make a difference? And what are the type of safeguards and supports which could safeguard the interest of foreign investors? Mr. Bhargava.
Thank you, Harsha ma'am. Thank you, Harsha ma'am. I'll just keep it very quick, I think, in interest of time. So just a quick introduction about us. So Shapoorji Pallonji is India's oldest construction group with a rich history of 150 years and a turnover of more than $7.5 billion. AFCONS is the infrastructure arm of the group and one of the largest infrastructure construction companies in India with a turnover of more than $1.25 billion. Shapoorji Pallonji Group has been present in Africa since early 90s, and we have worked in more than 25 countries, including some of the landmark projects such as the Flagship House in Ghana, National Assembly in Gambia, Mahatma Gandhi Convention Center in Niger, etc. In infrastructure, with a lot of support from Exim Bank, we have been involved in some large-scale infrastructure projects in Ghana, the railway line, Lusaka City Decongestion Project, port projects in Gabon, Mauritania, Mauritius, water projects in various countries, just to name a few. We have been partners as AFCON. We have been partners in development of Africa in the last couple of decades, but we believe there's still a lot of work to be done. So in terms of the support, I would say in terms of the work that has been done by Exim Bank, especially the bias credit scheme, I think that has been a win-win-win because under the scheme, we have got long tenure facilities available for large size infrastructure projects. We are able to support the local government in their critical requirements. And of course, it enhances the Indian exports. I think one key element that can be looked at is that how do we collaborate with like-minded countries, for example, Japan, which has been, again, investing a lot in the continent, and how can Japanese technologies along with Indian experience and capabilities can be utilized in Africa. Moving on to the next part, given that, as I think has been mentioned multiple times, the size of infrastructure deficit that we are looking at runs into trillions of dollars. So there is scope for everyone. And I think here private investment plays a key role. As Mr. Solomon had mentioned earlier, that various initiatives have been taken at all levels, continental, regional, as well as country levels, in terms of legislations, PPP units, etc. But I think there are still some effort that is required, some actions that need to be taken on behalf of the local countries. Because given that PPP has been successful in various countries such as Uganda, Senegal, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, etc., there's still only 10% of the projects that are taken up actually get up being executed. So is there a dearth of projects? I think no. Is there a lack of interest in Africa? I think no, because I think as per a study from McKinsey, almost $500 billion worth of funds have expressed interest in Africa. So I think the three key points that I would put to the table to resolve this dichotomy is one, how do we develop how do we strengthen the project development capabilities in terms of providing the seed capital for feasibility study, for doing the environmental studies, and bringing it to a level where private investors can come in. Second, how do we improve the bankability of the projects? Because let's face it, when private investors are coming, they are looking for risk-adjusted returns. So how do we ensure that some of the projects like ports, power have already shown their viability, railways not so much. So what are the efforts required, the support required from government to enhance the bankability? And third, finally, is, as my colleague Sahil also mentioned, the risk sharing and allocation. So I think currency risk is definitely a major risk that has to be taken care of. IFC, AFDB have been providing support, and I think their support, enhanced support, will be required in future to keep it going. And I think those are 3 points that I would just book. And I think thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhargav. Exactly on point. And I have made very detailed notes, and it was very interesting to hear each of you speak. But again, in the interest of time, I don't think I can afford to sort of summarize these points. But again, this session, the objective, I believe, and I agree, all of us will agree with me, is that we've met the objective of this session is basically to initiate this discussion. And I'm sure all of us have lots of ideas, and as everybody mentioned, collaboration and a mix of public-private, different instruments, deepening of capital bonds, they all will have to start working together if we need to sort of bridge the financing needs. And really, we can't depend on any one specific program for catering to such a large continent with such potential and huge requirements. So once again, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, CII, we have taken 5 minutes more than as per our schedule, but I think you'll excuse us on that. And I would like to thank everybody, all the esteemed panelists and our guests of honor for participating and sharing your insights with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.